Welcome to the HealthCast, where we explore the intersection of healthcare, technology, and business innovation. I'm Phil Zappone, family nurse practitioner and founder of NXAI Growth Consultancy. We help healthcare companies grow with AI and automation. On this show, I speak with founders, clinicians, and innovators who are building the future of healthcare. Today's guest, Dr. Trevor Kashey, is a PhD biochemist, renowned leader in nutrition, and entrepreneur, and utilizes science and common sense to impact and improve the health and well-being of his clients, ranging from everyday folks to Olympians and world-class athletes. In this conversation, we'll explore Dr. Kashey's career journey, his personal and business mission, and his insight for the future of nutrition and health. Welcome, Trevor. Welcome to the HealthCast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Phil. Really nice
to
hang out with you.
It's my pleasure. All right, let's just jump right into it. So Tell us in a nutshell, your career journey as a young person into leaning towards developing your business, Trevor Kashey Nutrition.
Well, I think kind of fun to start from ground zero, where as a child, I think if you ask my mother, like, I always wanted to do science or be a scientist or whatever you call it. I watched that show Dexter's Lab on Cartoon Network, if you've ever heard of it before, like this crazy little German kid who has this crazy laboratory in his basement. I loved it and, started talking science words, that any big, funny science sounding word, I would tell my mother and annoy her with it as much as I could. And I would say a few years later, probably into the kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade range, you know how like little kids, they want to, be Wolverine for Halloween. I definitely qualified as that weirdo in the corner going, how did they get the metal into his bones?
Yeah.
And I wanted to be that guy. And so very early on, I realized that like I cared very little about superheroes per se and cared much more about what made superheroes possible. And that like, do I want to have the metal in my bones? No, but I want to put metal in bones. You get the idea. The supervillain arc begins. So my father had very little time in my life. I'll just say that up until maybe 12 or 13 when I'll just say he got out, and we had very little in common because he used to have limited or poor interactions with nerds like me. And so when we had our visitation or we started developing a relationship, since we had nothing in common, we started lifting weights. And at that point, it became very clear to me that like I already had some interest in science. And now that I started lifting weights with my father, the two sort of intertwined quite obviously very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward a little bit, I did my first physique competition at 15 years old. I started college sort of awkwardly early, and I got my first degree in biochemistry at I think like 17, 18, something like this. A little too early for most people, I think, including me. I just worked year round and stayed obsessed with science.
I'm just can I jump in there for a second?
Yeah.
Can I jump in just for the audience?
Yeah, please.
Thanks. So just to put it out there, the obvious. So you're just academically gifted at a young age. You just kind of tore through school and early to college.
So I think my mother would tell you yes. I worked year round when other people took time off.
Yes, sir.
So at 4 years year round, you very liberally or conservatively get an extra year. Okay. So essentially, like, I did whatever I could to continue my education, and my mother, bless her, did whatever she could to enable that. And I entered college at like, I want to say 14 or something like this. And I just had such a strong interest in biology that I had nowhere I could go to at least get taught those things.
Can I try it again?
Yeah.
Passionate about education at a young age, just thirsty for more knowledge and information that was inspiring to you.
So I'm really, definitely obsessed with how the world works. And
cool.
Given, I think the introduction with my dad back into my life and we started lifting weights, it put a very large bias about my obsession with how the world works into the realm of biology, biochemistry, things of that nature. Bodybuilding and lifting weights very quickly goes into the realm of the biochemical for a wide variety of reasons. So with a general interest in chemistry, but also an interest in biology, I discovered upon looking at the university options for degrees that they offered a biochemistry. And so that just really got me very excited. And of course, the nutrition aspect of bodybuilding as well. And biochemistry just sort of had all of those things intertwined. And what does biochemistry mean other than what does your body do with food after you eat it? Now, kind of an uncharitable way of saying it if you want to sound fancy, but chemistry, the chemistry your body does comes from ultimately the things you put in your mouth.
Hmm.
Uh, so to me, where other people might see fruits and vegetables and meat and starch, I see carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, and enzymes that change, the activation energy. I see food more on the atomic level, what occurs inside of your body, rather than like, oh, is eating lettuce good for you? In biochemistry, you kind of really get to answer the question, what does healthy mean, and how do you know that?
Do you enjoy food still with your knowledge base, with your understanding, or do
Oh,
you
I,
simply look
I
at it like
enjoy
fuel?
it more than ever.
Yeah.
I enjoy it more than ever. I will say that the nature of my enjoyment has changed tremendously. Like, for instance, because of my background in hard science, it, and biochemistry in general, it made cooking far more interesting.
Yeah.
And my ability to concoct things will rival the best. I have zero chance of ever following a recipe, mind you, but I know that this enclosed box generates heat and that folds protein and the Maillard reaction and blah. So I totally dork out on food,
Yeah, I
cooking
love
in
that.
particular. And so I kind of make it my mission to, my mother would say, Dr. Kashey off labels your middle name. I would like, I'll get a kitchen tool or something and I will just do whatever I possibly can to use it wrong and see if I can still get a good outcome. But by and large, if you have a vessel that generates heat and you have insulation around it, then you have everything you could possibly need to cook.
Yeah.
So I end up doing a lot of cooking and more, tinkering, things of that nature, knowing that like to some degree you can say, well, it all goes to the same place. And on the other side of the equation, when you start working with people, which I started working with people relatively young while still in undergrad, I started taking on my first clients about 18 or 19
Like training them.
yeah, after I started my doctoral degree in full swing. I worked with everybody for free. People would ask me questions and then
Hmm.
I would answer because I compulsively, I just obsess about this stuff
Yeah.
until I just sort of ran out of time to interact with people. And one guy said, well, what if I paid you when you just did that? I went, oh, you can do that. I just lost it. I
Yeah.
just absolutely
Yeah.
lost it. So the business sort of started on accident
Yeah.
in that way. And I transitioned from, you know, bodybuilding style training and competition. I did two competitions there. And the lifestyle and the pharmacy and all of that stuff definitely sort of like sat poorly with me for a variety of reasons. Now I understand tools for the job, etc., but just a different sort of lifestyle. And I discovered strength sports, in particular strongman.
Yeah.
And nothing had ever provided me with a sense of fraternity in my life ever. Having grown up entirely with a single mother, living very, very far away from school, constantly you know, in class with people significantly older than me. Thankfully, I looked the part, but I still sort of acted. I knew enough to stay quiet, but I still annoyed people with questions always. So when I transitioned into strongman, it just had a very wonderful community that welcomed me and allowed
That's
me
cool.
to have sort of an athletic or still strength weight, a strength related or athletics lifestyle that, took less than 24 hours a day to excel. You
Can I
want to win a
interject?
bodybuilding yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to throw a question at you
Yeah.
because I feel like something we connected on in our last call was, our stories connected to exercise as young guys.
Yeah.
Was the gym aside from? Let me see if I can formulate my question. Was your pursuit in the gym? I heard you connecting with your dad as an introduction, and I'm not sure if that was ongoing, but was it a place for you to take out big emotions? When I was younger, the gym was a place for me to, I don't think I did not articulate this, but it was a place where I took out my demons. I'm pleased as an adult to say that I no longer use dark fuel when I go to the gym. And is that something that,
Yes.
was it cathartic for you?
I will actually say no. I struggled with what I thought I had as depression for a long time, and I've I've actually questioned what you'll allow on the show regarding things like that. I started with lifting weights as something to do with my father. Of course, when you start doing it, you progress relatively rapidly. And when you combine it with a hard science, learning more about my body and learning more about biochemistry, those things sort of compelled each other a little bit. And having it done competitions regularly, that actually kept me involved. And when I started taking on clients, then staying in the gym became sort of like a value, or like from a role model perspective or integrity sort of perspective. I made it part of my job. And my ability to deal with emotions came relatively much later. Uh,
I think that happens to lots of us.
for me in particular, I found the gym, and a lot of people that I coached, that I do coach, they use the gym to use it as a cathartic release for a lot of the negativity they have. For lots of people, particularly people who compete in amateur sport, CrossFit or weightlifting or endurance athletes, things of that nature, because of the relatively effective emotion regulating capacity of those activities, for many people, it quickly becomes a way to avoid managing the issue that causes the distress to begin with.
Right.
So, whenever I interact with somebody who wants to compete in something, I make it very clear that I personally will only condone it if I can verify that they compete in this for the love of the sport rather than to try and make themselves feel accomplished in some area and avoid things that could actually use the attention.
Yeah.
So I take it really
Holistic approach.
seriously. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like if you do really struggle with, I'll just say, doing dumb shit, well, if you go to the gym instead of doing dumb shit, definitely step one. Now,
Agreed.
if you respond well in the gym and you have rough things going on in your life, then the gym will eventually become a place to avoid real life. And then you start, entering competitions, and before you know it, you spend 25 hours a week, as an amateur athlete trying to do everything except for reconcile the issues you have in your daily life. So, like I said, I do think, as my grandpa would say, an ass for every seat, as my dad would say, a tool for every job. I do see the, excuse me, physical activity or the gym as an okay way for a 0 to 1 of emotion regulation, even if, because again, the more time you spend in the gym, the less time you spend doing dumb stuff. Now, if that time you then spend to you sort of develop a strategy of how to manage this, the dumb stuff once you leave, then it becomes something super adaptive.
Makes perfect sense. And I kind of wish I heard this advice about 20 years ago,
You'd have
but
ignored it anyway.
yeah, I would have ignored it, what you're saying in your approach. And I've been guilty of some of those things myself.
I do have a nice little axiom that I use with people often that has lots of generalizability. So I will say a lot of people will say, like, I'm out of shape, I want to run a marathon, and they will train for a marathon as a way to get in shape. And in my world, you run a marathon because you've gotten in shape rather than to get in shape. And
I understand the difference.
on the same token, exercise and just physical activity, especially physical activity with other people, a tremendous way to stay regulated, but different than using it to get regulated. So if you have most of your shit taken care of in your day-to-day life and you have yet to start regular physical activity, or especially with other people, then it becomes an extremely useful support system that when something comes into your life and throws you off, it will help you stay regular. If
Yeah.
you have your life completely out of whack and then you try and do group physical activity, it just becomes another thing that stresses you out. So you do it to stay regulated rather than to get regulated. Same thing with food. It's, all of these activities, I see them separate and interrelated. Like, does food have anything to do with exercise? Well, yes and no. Does exercise have anything to do with social activity? Well, yes and no. Just
Mm.
depending on the sort of glasses you put on, they either, you can look at them analytically as very separate, but holistically, you had better hope they all have interactions with each other.
Yeah, yeah. I follow you. Take
Yeah.
me move forward from? So you're a young man pursuing your PhD,
Yeah.
training people. I think that means personal training as well as probably giving nutrition advice, pursuing your PhD in
Yeah.
biochemistry, fascinated with science. Take me from there to bringing you up to a little bit more current and how your business
Okay.
evolved. You
So I'll do
from
the
you were
first.
probably in the local community, and then from there
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, heard. So I started in, doing research in cancer. Started that very early. Studied non-small cell lung cancer. I moved that, and I started transitioning into dietary supplements. I had a formulation job for a couple of years while in school. From there, during my doctoral degree, I went officially into clinical nutrition. And I went through a clinical nutrition education, and I had said no to the licensure for a variety of reasons. And at the end of my doctoral degree, I had started competing, did very well in strongman. I set some records that effectively worked as advertising for me. So it drummed up quite a bit of business, and it allowed me to continue on and support myself just through coaching.
Throw
And
some numbers around for us.
I
Like a
deadlift in the sevens and
whoa, yeah, yeah, big number. Yeah,
bench
yeah.
and overhead press in the threes. I'll just
Yeah,
say that.
buddy. Yeah, buddy. I have to get those numbers. I have to add up all my lifts together, not just one time like
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And near the end of my doctoral degree, I'll just say some Russian speaking persons started talking to me, and I actually thought I had a joke. I got an email on April 1st thinking that I had some April Fool's joke, but it said, "Do you make wrestling?" And I just replied with, "Yes, I make wrestling." And literally a few minutes later, I got a ticket. I got an airplane ticket to Miami, Florida. And I had a complete YOLO moment. And if you knew me at the time, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll die. You threaten me with a good time. I'll just say that. I got recruited to go to the parts of the world where they speak, Russian and Arabic and things of that nature to work with many of those athletes for the 2016 Olympic Games.
And you actually went to Florida, and then you continue with this journey to a
Yeah,
foreign
they,
country.
they they tried to take me then, and I said I have to graduate, and they said okay, graduation day plus one. So the day after I graduated, I flew to the other side of the world, and I stayed there for quite a while. Glad I did it. Have zero chance of ever doing something like that ever again. The smartest dumb decision I've ever made in my life. I lived there, lived in a barracks, had hundreds of athletes and government officials and whatever you can think of. I had my thumbs on. I did a lot of work with the infrastructure there. You only have so many reasons Russian speaking peoples will hire an American trained biochemist for the Olympics. And I definitely understood that. I also understood after going there that they had other things that would probably improve performance more than the sort of things that they wanted me to do. And at my own risk, I acted American and ended up making some really big changes to their living conditions that actually improved performance dramatically. That I assumed that would, by all accounts, safer and more effective than doing the things they wanted me to do. Even if they had incorporated that sketchy stuff, I still think these other changes I made improved performance more. Things like air conditioning and filters.
It sounds like maybe you spoke up and were bold for the sake of improving, helping
Yes.
others.
Yep.
Good for
Oh,
you.
I had definitely a DGAF. Like, I definitely had like what's the worst that could happen? They'll kill me. Great. Again, different time in my life, but it allowed me to, like, let's just say I had very high risk tolerance. They used to fly the communist flag and now they don't. The culture there still definitely acts very, deferent or work avoidant or some combination. And so I just kind of walked in and started throwing bombs, the equivalent at least to them.
Of
And
how you want to do
that worked
things.
out pretty well. Well, not how I want to do things. And I made that very clear. Like what they wanted, they made it difficult for me to do because the living, just the conditions that they kept the athletes in made it difficult to do the stuff
Yeah.
that they wanted me to do to
The
begin with.
desired outcome and what the training
Yeah,
facility or something along
yep.
these lines wasn't
Well, we
congruent.
just set up this stepwise plan that, like, well, let's do these things first and measure performance improvement. And then if they still have issues, we can then start going this other direction. But this other stuff, like, well, if you spend, 6 to 7% of the year out of practice because you get sick, well, then if I can cut that in half or more, then you have more training sessions. I mapped all of that stuff out. So Spent a while over there. Let's just say I ended up defecting for a variety of reasons. And after some sketchy situations for myself back in the United States, I
Yeah.
eventually got to move away and hide away and start this other stuff going on that I had in Florida for a while. I started having officially a location in Florida and worked there for a few years at a strength and conditioning facility. So I'd operated remotely and then also on the people that trained at the strength and conditioning facility, and went very well. And that sort of brings you to the present day of the TKN as it exists now. Obviously, it has scaled and I operate out of other places. But right
Yeah.
now, the business as people know it now started essentially, out of an office in Florida
Yeah.
and has essentially grown since then.
In 1 to 2 sentences, can you tell us the mission of TKN?
Everything we do, we learned to do it. Okay? The stuff that helps us, the stuff that hurts us, the stuff that hurts us used to help us in some way, either short term or long term. And the whole organization rides under the flag that if you learned to do something one way, then you could learn to do something another. So, from a mission perspective, we operate as if everybody can learn to do the things it takes to have the lives they want to have.
Can I say it back to you?
Yes.
You help people adapt to their
Keep going. Yeah.
yeah, to their
Yeah.
goals or whatever. They come to you with some concerns, weight,
Yeah.
strength, physique, something,
Yeah.
and you help them. The behavior is positive or negative at different points. You help
Yeah.
them maybe on a big scale, believe in themselves. You give them maybe some direction,
Yeah.
believe in
So,
themselves, and adapt.
so the annoying part about interacting with me, if somebody says I want to lose weight or get stronger, I say, who gives a shit?
At
Who
this point in my life,
cares?
it's cool, but
Yeah.
ultimately,
Yeah. So what does that mean? Right. So really the mission boils down to three questions. So I think of these functions. I say, well, what does that mean? And how do you know it means that? And does that actually help you? So if somebody says, well, I want to get strong or I want to get lean, I say, what does that mean?
what does it mean? Does it mean like X number of weight, or what does it mean for impacting your life,
Exactly. And
or
so
both?
I will make it very Socratic. If you say, well, I want to get lean or get strong, 99.99% of people will nod and smile. Nobody else will really force you to say, well, who cares?
Yeah.
And I care about that. So I care what it means to you, not what it means to me or anybody else.
I ask my patients, and I used to personal train a little bit locally, and I would try to get people to tap into their why, their motivation. Why do you want to do this? Some of these things I ask you might be uncomfortable. Why do you want to do this? And
Mhm.
I would tell them that's your fuel for, say, when it's raining outside, when you don't want to get out of bed. Is that what you're saying?
Partly, yes. So I like to act rather contrarian, mostly for the sake of it. Like I actually have the equal opposite. I say the cult of why must die. In other words, like people so obsessed with why things happen, they forget to just do the thing. I call it the root cause fallacy. Like, okay, you cry a lot, you feel depressed, so you go lay on the couch and talk to, Freud Jr., and you figure out that your mom didn't hug you enough, so now you feel depressed and you hate your mom. You have accomplished nothing. So, to the why factor, that kind of does go into like, well, what does that mean? How do you really know it means this? And then that last question, instead of asking why do you want to do it, I flip it on its head and say, tell me exactly how that helps you.
Say that again for me. One more, the last part, like bring it
I
together
will
for me.
say, tell me exactly how this helps you.
So if someone comes to you, let's bring it to it. So a client comes to you, I want to
Yes.
get fitter. Let's just like, be vague.
Yes.
I want to get fitter.
Yeah.
And you
Yep.
respond, you put it back on them. I'm getting that in the
Yep.
Socratic method. I got that.
Yes.
But like how does this benefit your life? How does this help you?
Exactly. So the why I want to do, asking
You
somebody
want to
why,
understand them a little bit.
yes, asking somebody why will almost inevitably have people going in circles. They'll say, "Well, I want to get healthier," and then you say, "Well, why do you want to get healthier?" And the whys never end,
Yeah.
right? So it does become a way to continue a conversation. I like to get super reductive and say like, okay, what exactly, if you could wave a magic wand, would happen in your life right now if this changed? And if you have trouble answering that question, well, then that gives us lots of information. Now, people like the idea of a lot of the like, why do, well, I'll get more girls. I'll be healthier. I'll do, but this just leads to more, the vagaries lead to vagaries lead to vagaries. until you eventually get to something like, dude, I just want to fucking walk my dog without hurting. Now we've gotten somewhere. Now we have something that we have a actionable, we have something functional, we have something
I would call that fuel.
concrete. And
Yeah,
even I get so violent about
I
this.
see it, man. I see it. Is that
Yeah.
for do they light up too, or is that for your own understanding of people, or do they
So
get a sense of?
I definitely light up before them, and I try to limit that
Yeah.
as much as I can. Now, I get excited, as a behavior scientist, where to me, if we have a concrete actionable, the concrete actionable now allows for a discrete set of instructions with a regression. So if I know that this person, wants to get leaner, but really they want to walk around the block without pain or not hate themselves as much, which might mean insult themselves, whatever we turn this into, it eventually corresponds to, like you mentioned earlier, doing some things less and some things more. And ideally, doing some things less to make room for the stuff you got to do more. And why the concreteness matters so much, the concreteness allows you to have a list of things to do more, a list of things to do less, and what we can do to change the probabilities of, well, how do we raise the chance of you doing smart stuff more? And how do we lower the chance of you doing dumb stuff?
How do you respond when you're having this interview process and the person is either resistant, doesn't have the emotional availability or desire to self-reflect or to share vulnerability? So as a business, you want to grow, you want to make money. How do you
Great
move forward from there?
question. So at TKN, I actually have a program called the Kickstart program, where you sort of earn the right to interact with any of the coaches on a one-on-one fashion. And this has a bifurcated effect. One, if you have zero experience with coaching, it takes you 3 months just to get your shit together before you start getting real value from it. And for that reason, I actually have regular interactions where people will go through a curriculum where instead of me jumping right into, having a sort of hardcore Socratic sort of discussion with somebody, I'll say, you know what? How about you just take a week and keep track of the stuff you already do?
Yeah.
And so somebody in 9.9 out of 10 times, I actually have real data, but we have to pull it for this. But essentially, if you can read and you have a basic level of education and you say, well, I want to get leaner. And I say, okay, I totally agree with that. Awesome. Take the next week and just write down all the stuff you eat. Okay. You will make progress just because you start paying attention.
Yeah.
I
I
call
use the
that
term in the clinic room.
observation as intervention.
Yeah, I use the term in the clinic room also. I try to put it on them. Obviously, I'm not in business. I'm an employee there, the hospital setting. But I try to meet them where they're at.
And so to me, instead of trying to guess, I gather that data.
Yeah.
And by virtue of gathering the data, I have installed ways for people to pay attention to their surroundings more than usual. And it sort of accidentally allows for generating the concrete language that a fruitful Socratic discussion demands.
Yeah.
So everything with me, everything starts with, well, like, let's find the current position. But the current position comes from actually looking at it, not by talking about it. And by virtue of you now deliberately paying attention to the things you do on a daily basis, when you do them, how you do them, the conditions they occur, and you start keeping track of those things, all on your own, you start to see like, ooh, I could do
Patterns.
that less. I could do that exactly.
Yeah.
And now, after going through essentially a curriculum that gets you very skilled at just this, just by learning how to do this, you get the 80/20.
Yeah.
You get an enormous amount of value on any axis, particularly weight loss and strength and health, by going like, how do I contribute to my current condition? Well, you can only know that by actually looking.
Taking ownership.
I just see it all as data. To me,
Yeah.
I see it all as data, and why I have this sort of axiom that like everything we do, even if it hurts us now, at some point helped us. Like alcohol at one point had an adaptive function. At one point it did. Now it went away somewhere along the line and started netting losses. But having
Hmm.
the operational understanding that everything we do, we had learned to do it somewhere, and we learned to do it because it provided some sort of benefit.
Yeah.
And for that reason, it makes it very easy for me to sort of eject a value judgment for any of this analysis because I know that, okay, well, if I put my butthead PE teacher glasses on, I know that this person, oh, you act like a dipshit. You should, but really, I just see that like we have an environment and we behave with respect to that environment. And if our behaviors, help us feel good now and hurt us more later, that provides an opportunity to analyze the environment and see what sort of changes would make sense to shift our
Yeah.
behaviors and shift our activities to something that help us now and later rather than now or later. And that becomes a very, very strong sort of pillar that we focus on, that all of us can figure things out that feel good now. And all of us can figure things out and know of things that'll help us later. But this helps you figure out, well, what helps me now and later rather than now or later. Hopefully that makes sense.
It was kind of an epiphany for me, but at the same time, I'm not sure if I should be embarrassed by that because by the obviousness of it. That I'm going to say definitely 75% plus, maybe upwards of 90% of what I treat in primary care is self-induced.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's really bothered me and I feel that marketing is effective. I feel it's multifactorial for what we've adapted to. I'm not sure if that's just a thought or a question. Just it's been upsetting me a little bit. And tell me your thoughts
yes.
on it.
I think that the way you have framed it, I can see makes it very upsetting and sort of points people very much off a nihilistic cliff of like, no matter what I do, these people, they just every problem they cause, they do it to themselves. And no matter what I
Predominantly,
try,
I'm
well,
treating
yes,
obesity, diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia.
yes,
That's what I'm
and
paid for.
correct. And this really makes an enemy out of your patient. And I think you getting sort of riled up about it follows because you have this frame of fault and blame. And to me, when you say self induced, to me, that means they have the opportunity to improve it.
I believe
It,
so. I'm
and to
really
me,
pushing hard on lifestyle modifications as
yes,
primary and pharmacotherapy as
yeah,
secondary.
correct. And I think by and large, on paper, that sounds wonderful. And in reality, the behavior modification, again, changing somebody's behavior, changing your own behavior occurs with respect to changes in your environment. Why, when you talk to somebody about this, they'll nod and smile and maybe even might demonstrate some of the behaviors you prescribe to them. And then as soon as they go home, they revert. And it makes it very easy for an expert to essentially get offended and say, well, how do you essentially disrespect me and do something else when I've taken my time and energy to give you all of this godly wisdom? And in reality, they have a different environment. In this environment, they act adaptive. In that environment, they act aberrant. And you have the role as a practitioner to ask the question, what makes this environment adaptive? What makes that one aberrant? And of those things, which can we modify so that we can make it more aberrant when they go home or go out?
You know what word
Things
I've been
in
using
their
lately?
surroundings, huh?
I've been using the term lately, low-hanging fruit. That's what I try to go
Yeah,
for.
yeah,
Simplest one I throw at people who report a sedentary lifestyle. I ask them to park further away when they go. Like this is a small
yes.
community. We have a Walmart and a supermarket. I said, can you just park on the other end? You don't have to go to the gym. Can you just move more?
Yep, I think, the baby step rule is definitely pretty common.
Mhm.
I think that by and large, if you see, the surrounding environment will evoke behaviors in us. Something like people like you forget all of your instructions when you leave. But in reality, nothing in that new place you go to pulls the instructions out of you to use. So
Yeah.
that sounds kind of abstract, but in reality, like for instance, I might work with somebody who says they have binge eating problems or disorders, whatever,
Mhm.
and I might say, well, do you have an eating at night problem or do you have a cabinet opening problem? And we can just ignore the food entirely and say, well, we can just keep track of how many times you open the cabinet. And just by keeping track of how many times you open the cabinet, the amount of times the cabinet opens goes down over time. And
Yeah.
other benefits go with it. So again, just sort of looking at like, what about the environment? Oh, so now this cabinet actually raises the chance of
Yeah.
these goofy things happening.
I'm not a counselor, but I'll ask people when they tell me they're eating at night, and I'll ask them why. Is it hunger or is it no? They'll say when they start digging. I've heard answers like anxiety or fidgeting or something along these lines. I'm like, I totally get it. I have anxiety at times. I fidget. Can you fidget or express that anxiety in another way? Can we do
Sure.
something? I'm not saying you got to eat more broccoli. I'm just saying let's accept that, and then just
Yes.
is there another option that you could choose?
And I completely obviate the why part. I think the people do things because the outcome reinforces the behavior, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, why not eat cake? Eating cake is better than not eating cake. I see anything beyond that is honestly a little more complicated. So to me, I ask the question, well, what makes what in your immediate settings? Like to me, the why stuff goes way into the clouds, goes back into, well, it's because I hate my mom. And now it sort of leads us in circles in the clouds and it makes it difficult to find something directly connected. And so to me, like, well, the why somebody does it, well, they do it because of the outcome, the short-term
Yeah.
outcome. Like I just see that as just behavior science level zero. The immediate outcome raises the chances of reoccurrence. And so then we ask, well, what about the immediate outcome? And then what raises the chance of getting that outcome or lowers it? So again, the why, like I already know why a person eats burgers all the time. Burgers are delicious. And
They're
so like
amazing.
why do we get any more complicated than
Yeah.
this? In my opinion, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that maybe your amount of burger eating goes down or the types of burgers you eat change, things of this nature, rather than like, well, again, trying to dig into the person's psyche.
Yes.
That I like that to me
Keep it simple. Yeah.
that asks them to demonstrate skills almost nobody has, and if they have the skills, they wouldn't have the problem.
What makes TKN special and different from other nutrition and fitness businesses? And where do you see the future of TKN?
So I will tell you that I see TKN especially unique because what you want comes as a side effect rather than a main effect. And it all centers around becoming the person it takes to have the things you want rather than getting the thing you want on its own.
The journey, the inner
So
journey.
going back to the mission statement, like this has to do with becoming the person it takes, not getting the thing, becoming the person. I think as the main effect, it definitely leads people back in a circle of where they started.
Yeah.
So to me, instead of saying like, well, how do I get skinny? I ask the question, well, what or how do I get lean or how do I lose all this weight? I might ask the question, well, what sort of person, like how does a person act? What sort of person does it take to get this result? And then how can we change what you do and the interactions you have with others and your surroundings to help you become that person? So this thing you want just comes as a side effect of that.
I'm going to say it back to you.
Yeah.
TKN considers the whole person and digs deeper into their motivation so that they make lasting change. Is that what you guys excel at?
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
What's the
We're
future look
very
like for you
much like,
guys?
honestly, man, sticking to our roots. I will tell you that as technology has progressed over the 20 years plus years that I have done this, people have gone the way of automating the wrong things. And so I still have phone calls. I still use paper and pencil.
Right.
Yes. So to me, like, I think so many businesses try to figure out ways to automate their interactions with the customer or client or student. And I go for the inverse. How do I automate literally everything except for the interaction so that I can maximize the value of that interaction when it occurs?
I'm going to say it back to you. You prioritize relationships, people.
You only have your words. You only have your words. And so I will do whatever it takes to make sure the words we have as great a weight as possible. And when a robot spews those words, they work on accident, right? And so to me, we do everything we possibly can on purpose and with a purpose. Some people do one or the other, and we try to do both. And as technology progresses rather rapidly, I I stay bullish on using those tools to make everything except for relationship management automated.
I love it. I like that you use the word, and I'm hearing the word tools. They're tools. They're not, they don't replace human relationships and values.
No,
They're tools to build those
like
relationships.
I have a team of over 20 people, and like this of varying professions, right? Physical therapists, dietitians, SEALs, ranger, like we've got the gamut.
Damn, yeah.
But they all have, very fun sort of outer wrappers. But really, I only care because they give a shit about you. The rest of it I see is, this domain specific knowledge I see is very valuable, but you and I both know, like, domain specific knowledge we can find,
Yeah.
it, we can look
Yeah.
it up. The caring about the people you interact with, that matters the most. And the way most businesses go, they rob us of this. And the frankly, the persuasive component that helps people improve their lives, like, yeah, I feel comfortable saying that, like, we do our best to persuade you into doing less dumb shit and doing more smart shit.
There needs to be
You know
more
what I
businesses
mean?
like I do.
Yeah, and so to me, like, I've kept it relatively small on purpose. When you have a business that relies entirely on manpower and woman power, the larger it gets, the more diluted. To me, this has become a very slow, deliberate, meaningful process where every time we bring on another person, we have to ask, has the product diluted? So to me, this all has to do with what do the outcomes look like? How do the people we interact with respond? And how can we prove that we have done everything that we've cared as
Yeah.
much as humanly possible about this? So hopefully that answers your question.
I'm sure your clients feel that, your passion and your sincerity, and it comes across in our conversation today. Dr. Kashey, I want to thank you so much for coming on the Healthcast. It was a real pleasure. Where can our listeners go to learn more about TKN?
Definitely check out trevorkasheynutrition.com. You can also send messages through various social media outlets. We will talk to anybody on the phone,
Yeah.
like a real person. So I think just hit me up anywhere you can, and you'll get in contact with
Human being. Everyone's going to call you from that. Yeah, man. Get a human being on the phone these days.
this. Like, very much a priority that we will talk to every single person who asks.
I love it.
Yeah.
I want to thank you again, Trevor. It was a real pleasure. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. Stay tuned for another episode of the Healthcast. Thanks for listening to the Healthcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and subscribe. And share it with someone in healthcare or digital health. And if you're a healthcare leader focused on scaling your business or improving operations, I'm always open to connecting. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's a link in the show notes. Thanks so much.